Hi, I'm Claire. It's the final video in my 12 Days of Clairmas series, and these are my most anticipated books for the first 3 months of 2019, so January through March 2019. For the past couple of years I've done a single video for most anticipated releases for the whole year, and that was also my plan for 2019, but it turns out I have way too many books that I'm excited for this year. My Goodreads shelf for most anticipated releases of 2019 has more books in it than I read in the past year, so I'm never going to be able to read all of these books, but if I have to suffer with way too many books on my TBR, then so will you, dear viewer. So will you. By the way, I'm going to link in the description box below to my Goodreads shelf that has all of these books on it, so that if you want to save any of them to your want to read list, that's the easiest way to go about it. And now let's get started with January releases. On January the 8th we've got The Girl King by Mimi Yu, out from Bloomsbury YA. This is an epic fantasy novel about sisters Lu and Min. They are imperial princesses, they've always known what their destinies would be. Lu will succeed her father as the ruler of the empire, while Min will live in her shadow pretty much forever. However, everything changes when their father decides to name their male cousin as the heir instead. Lu goes on the run, she's determined to reclaim her birthright somehow. Min is alone at court, she's struggling to hide her newly discovered deadly and very forbidden magic powers. It sounds pretty great to me. I do like an intrigue and backstabby court novel. Out from Tor.com Publishing, also on the 8th of January, we've got In an Absent Dream by Shauna Maguire. This is the 4th novella in her Wayward Children series, which started with Every Heart a Doorway. The series is about children who have gone through magical doors and have had adventures in fairy tale lands, only to be returned to the mundane world forever changed. In this book we follow Lundy, who we met as the school therapist in Every Heart. She looks about 8 years old, but she claims that she's about 80, which probably has something to do with her time living in the Goblin Market. I've really enjoyed every book in the series so far. It should come as no surprise that I'm massively looking forward to this new installment. I filmed this a bit late, so now it's coming out super soon. Out on January 15 from Rick Riordan Presents, we've got Dragon Pearl, a middle grade novel by Yoon-Ha Lee, the author of the acclaimed Nine Fox Gambit series. This is a space opera about a girl called Min. She comes from a long line of fox spirits, but she has to hide her powers because her mother insists that the whole family will be safer that way. When Min's brother is accused of having deserted his post in the Space Forces to go in search of the Dragon Pearl, a powerful magical artifact, Min refuses to believe it can be true, and she sets off to clear his name. Now, I know a lot of people adore Nine Fox Gambit, but I found it a little intimidating when I tried it, so I'd like to start reading Yoon-Ha Lee with something a little shorter and a little easier to read, and Dragon Pearl sounds perfect for that to me. On January 30th, KJ Charles is publishing a new novel called Any Old Diamonds. It's a male-male historical romance about Lord Alexander, the youngest son of a duke, and Jerry, the soldier turned criminal who Alexander hires to steal a priceless jewel from his estranged father. And in order to pull off this heist, Jerry has to pose as a gentleman and a friend of Alexander's for the duration of a visit to their family seat. This sounds like a delightful, tropey romp from one of my new favourite romance authors. I cannot wait to get my hands on this one. Angie Thomas's second novel, On the Come Up, is out from Bolzer and Bray on February the 5th. It is about 16-year-old Brie who wants to hit it big as a rapper and be one of the greats. Or at least she wants to make it out of her neighbourhood someday. But now that her mom's lost her job and money's really tight, it's not just about wanting to make it anymore, she has to make it. This was originally slated for a 2018 release, and it was already on my anticipated list last year, purely based on Angie Thomas's writing, so I'm just as excited to get to it in 2019. Also out on February 5th, we've got Black Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon James. This one comes out from Riverhead Books, and it's a hefty fantasy novel inspired by African beliefs and mythology. We follow Tracker, a man known far and wide for his skills as a hunter. He usually works alone, but when he's hired to find a missing boy, he has to team up with this hodgepodge group of unusual characters, including a mysterious shapeshifter known as Leopard. This sounds really intriguing. I'm always there for epic fantasy that isn't set in Europe or steeped in European mythology, so this one sounds great. Next up is an anthology called A People's Future of the United States, speculative fiction from 25 extraordinary writers, edited by Victor Laval and John Joseph Adams. This is published by One World and it comes out on February the 5th. I have to confess, when I first heard about this book, I got pretty excited, mostly because I studied a people's history of the United States for my degree. I understand that reference! But also, wow, that list of contributors. We've got Charlie Jane Anders, Justina Ireland, N.K. Jemisin, Shauna Maguire, Catherine M. Valenti, G. Willow Wilson, Charles Yu, and many, many more. I cannot wait for this one. Polaris Rising by Jessie Mihalik comes out from Harper Voyager on February the 5th. It's a romantic sci-fi novel about the unlikely alliance between a space princess on the run from an arranged marriage and a notorious outlaw known as the Devil of Fornax Zaire. This is really interesting to me because it's not that common to see a science fiction novel that really centers the romance element this much, but the blurb on Goodreads actually calls this one an imaginative, sexy space opera adventure. And as someone who loves both romance and sci-fi, my interest is very, very piqued. Moving on to February 12th, we've got The Test by Sylvain Novelle coming out from Tor.com Publishing. This is a novella set in a near-future United Kingdom, and the test from the title is the British citizenship test. We follow Idir, an immigrant who is hoping that he and his family will be allowed to remain in the UK as he sits this test. I'm an immigrant to the UK myself. I have an application for naturalization as a British citizen that's being processed right now, so I can tell this story is going to hit really close to home, and I'm very intrigued to see where it goes. Also on February 12th, Crown of Feathers by Nikki Pau-Pertot comes out from Simon Pulse. This is a high fantasy novel about a war orphan called Veronica who dreams of becoming one of the legendary Phoenix Riders of old. After a betrayal from her sister, Veronica strikes out alone to find the riders. She's determined to join their ranks, even if she has to disguise herself as a boy to do so. Yes please, give it to me, sounds amazing. In case you didn't know, Dragon Riders of Pern was my first fandom, and I love a cross-dressing heroine, so this is ticking all of my boxes. I want it in my eyeballs right now. The City in the Middle of the Night by Charlie Jane Anders comes out from Tor Books also on February the 12th, and it has the most fascinating premise. It is set on a tidally locked world with never-changing zones of day and night, so you've got extreme climates of endless frigid darkness on one side and blending relentless light on the other. And humanity can only survive in this narrow sliver of land in between those two extremes. Our main character Sophie is exiled into the endless freezing night where it is assumed that she will die, but instead she survives by befriending a creature of the dark. And I am super excited about that because I want to read more about Sophie and her monster pal and the adventures they get up to. On February 19th, Tor.com Publishing releases The Haunting of Tramcar 15. This is a new novella from Pete DeJelly Clark. It is set in an alternate Cairo where humans live and work alongside otherworldly beings. Hamid is a senior agent with the Ministry of Alchemy, Enchantments, and Supernatural Entities, where his job is to handle issues that arise between the magical and the mundane, such as, for instance, maybe a dangerous possessed tram car. Who knows? Now, I discovered Clark's writing last year with his novella The Black God's Drums, which ended up on my favourites reads of 2018 list, so of course Of course, I'm excited to read more from him in the new year. On February 26, Catherine Tagan Books publishes Taylor K. Mejia's debut novel, We Set the Dark on Fire. Daniela is top of her class at the Medio School for Girls, where distinguished young women are trained to become either wives or childminders. But after she graduates and she discovers more of the world, she has to decide whether she wants to go along with these incredibly strict roles assigned to her, or whether she wants to join a resistance group seeking to challenge the inequality of her society. We've got a boarding school book, we've got rebellion, we've got lesbian romance. I am here for this one. And by the way, Taylor K. Mejia had a story in Toil and Trouble, which I really loved. So again, someone I want to read more from in 2019. The Priory of the Orange Tree is a new standalone novel by Samantha Shannon. It comes out from Bloomsbury Publishing on February 26. This is high fantasy, it is set in a world on the brink of war, and it's about the women who must lead the fight to save it. There is Queen Sabrin, who remains unmarried but must conceive a daughter in order to protect her realm from destruction. There is Ead, the lady-in-waiting, who keeps a watchful eye on the queen, secretly protecting her with forbidden magic. And across the sea there is Tane, who has trained all her life to be a dragon rider and is now faced with a terrible choice. This one sounds extremely epic. It's 800 pages plus of complex political intrigue, backstabbing, ladies kicking ass, and dragons. I am so here for it. On February 26, Orbit publishes Anne Leckie's first fantasy novel, The Raven Tower. The port city of Vastai has prospered for centuries under the protection of its god, the Raven, who watches over the city and enacts his will through a chosen human ruler who is known as the Raven's Lease. But the power of the Raven is weakening, and the secrets buried deep beneath the Raven Tower could prove yet more damaging than the false Lease who is sitting on the throne. Do I really need to say more than, oh my goodness, it's a high fantasy novel from Anne Leckie? If I weren't excited enough about this book, I have already been hearing some great reviews from friends of mine who've been lucky enough to get advance copies. I cannot wait for this one. On March 5th, we've got That Ain't Witchcraft by Seanan Maguire, published by Dole Books. This is the 8th book in the encrypted urban fantasy series, which follows the Prices, a family of cryptozoologists. They are basically conservationists who work with monsters and supernatural creatures. This is one of my favourite ongoing SFF series. It was a finalist for the Best Series Hugo last year, and I am really excited to get more of Antimony's story. She's currently on the run from some terrifying British baddies, and the end of the previous book was pretty dramatic. Once and Future by Amy Rose Capetta and Corey McCarthy is a sci-fi dystopian King Arthur retelling, and it comes out on March 5th from Little Brown and Company. When Ari crash lands on Old Earth and pulls a magic sword from presumably some stone or other, she is revealed to be the newest reincarnation of King Arthur. And she also meets Merlin, who has aged backwards over the centuries into a teenager. And then together they've got to break the curse that keeps Arthur coming back. I am not usually super into retellings, but this one sounds absolutely charming. I just kind of love the idea of retelling Arthurian myths in a sci-fi setting. The Women's War, out on March 5th from Del Rey Books, is a high fantasy feminist epic by Jenna Glass, in which a revolutionary spell gives women the ability to control their own fertility, with consequences that will of course rock the patriarchal society they live in to its core. We follow two women. There is Alice, a mother and the disinherited daughter of a king, and then in a neighbouring kingdom there is young Ellen, who finds herself unexpectedly on the throne after the sudden death of her grandfather. This sounds like it could be really great. However, it also sounds like it could go the way of the power and I could hate it. Hopefully it will be the former and not the latter. On March 12th, we've got The True Queen. This comes out from Ace Books, and it is the second book in Zen Cho's Regency fantasy universe, which she introduced in her debut novel, Sorcerer to the Crown. We follow sisters Muna and Sakti. They've been cursed by an enchanter. They don't know who it was. They just know that they've been bound as only sisters can be, and that Sakti is beginning to fade away. The only hope of saving her is to go to distant Britain, where the Sorceress Royale has established an academy to train women in magic. Now, I absolutely loved Sorcerer to the Crown. I'm really excited to revisit this world and get introduced to new characters. This one is probably my most hyped sequel of the entire year. Also on March 12th, we've got The Bird King by G. Willow Wilson. It comes out from Grove Press and it's a historical fantasy novel set at the height of the Spanish Inquisition. Fatima is a concubine in the royal court of Granada, the last emirate of Muslim Spain, and her dearest friend is Hassan, the palace mapmaker. He's been hiding his magic for fear of the Inquisition, but when his secret does come out, they have no choice, they have to go on the run together. This sounds fascinating to me. I don't think I've ever read a novel that was set in the Spanish Inquisition before, and who doesn't want to read about magical map making? New Sun's original speculative fiction by people of colour is an anthology edited by Nisi Shawl. It comes out from Polaris on March 12th, and it has to be my favourite cover from this entire list. This is another anthology with some great names attached, including Sylvia Moreno Garcia, Stephen Barnes, E. Lily Yu, Tobias Backel, Rebecca Rowanhorse, and of course it's edited by Nisi Shawl, which is pretty exciting too. Next up we've got Internment by Samira Ahmed. This is published on March 19th by Little Brown. It is set in a horrifying near future United States in which Muslim American citizens are forced into internment camps. We follow a teenage girl and her family who are held in one of those camps as they try to survive and ultimately obviously fight for their freedom. This one sounds like a lot, but also I really like stories about rebellions and revolutions, so it does sound like it would be right up my alley. In Cameron Hurley's new novel, The Light Brigade, which is out from Saga Press on March 19th, soldiers are broken down into light to travel to and from distant planets and distant fronts. We follow Dietz, a new infantry recruit who begins to experience combat drops that don't quite sync up with her platoons. And those combat drops, they tell a story of the war that's not at all what the corporate brass wants soldiers to think is going on. I also believe there is a time travel aspect to this novel, which I'm really excited for because that is a trope that I love. Also on March 19th, we've got the only single author collection on this list. Sooner or Later, Everything Falls into the Sea by Sarah Pinsker, which comes out from Small Beer Press. I've read a few of Pinsker's short stories before and I always enjoyed them. I especially loved her novella And Then There Were N-1, which was a Hugo finalist last year, so that is one collection I'm very likely to pick up if I can get my hands on it. And finally, coming out from Tor Books sometime in March 2019, we've got a memory called Empire by R.K.D. Martin. This is a science fiction novel about the newly appointed ambassador from a small but very independent mining station who realizes when she takes her new post that her predecessor was most likely murdered. But of course no one will admit to that, and it's up to her to figure out what happened and how she can protect herself from also being murdered. I am getting wicked strong ancillary justice vibes from this book. The description, the cover, the title, everything. I am so hyped for this book. I just want to read it as soon as possible, please. So that's it. Those were my most anticipated books for the first 3 months of 2019. Believe it or not, this list was actually the result of quite a bit of culling. There are plenty more exciting books coming out this year. I kept having to tweak the list right up until I recorded, and that's why I ended up recording a little bit late, because I kept hearing about so many new cool books. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below if I've left out any books that you're really excited about, or if I've let you know about some books to add to your TBRs. Hopefully I have. If you'd like to see more from me, you can check out a previous video on screen right now. And if you haven't yet, please hit the subscribe button that's on my face for a new video from me every week. I've been Claire, thanks so much for watching, and see you soon.